Good afternoon, dear friends. Saturday, 4:20 p.m. after the sitting period. So we are continuing with a book study project, which seems to be more a book reading project, and who wants to study or to listen to it depends on your intention or decision. For myself, and I hope for some others in my group, it will be of benefit anyway. So today is the fourth reading, so we had 3 with the 2 introductions, and then chapter 1 and chapter 2, and now we arrived at chapter 3, form and ritual. Let's first invite the bell. Because I think it is really a reading meditation. And thank you, Norma Fischer and Susan Moon. I hope you appreciate what we are doing, spreading your precious words also into the world and into Germany, and I hope it will be translated soon. I will say Susan when Susan is asking her questions, so it is not out of disrespect. I will not say Susan Moon or Susan Sensei. I will say Susan, and then I will say Norman when he's answering. Again the bell. Susan, what are the basic rituals and ceremonies in Zen? Do you have to bow a lot? Norman, Zen practice places around the country differ quite a lot in their practice formats. So the rituals you are likely to experience at a Zen place will differ, dependent on where you go. Some places I know have more ritual at some of their meetings than at others. So the ritual you experience might depend not only on where you go, but when you go. In most Soto Zen practice places, you will find 2 kinds of ritual. First, basic Zendo etiquette. You will probably be shown a particular way to enter the meditation hall, particular ways to walk in the hall, to bow to your cushion and sit down, to stand after sitting, to do the formal walking meditation, in brackets the slow walking we were talking about a minute ago. You will be instructed about the various bells that will be sounding to begin and end periods of meditation. If there are to be formal interviews with the teacher, held in a separate room, during the sitting practice you will be given instructions on this practice too. The details about all these things can seem elaborate when you first hear about them, but once you do them for a while, you realize that actually they are simple and natural and provide a way for everyone to comport themselves with a sense of calm and mutual respect. The strong feeling in Zen meditation halls is in no small part due to the care everyone takes with these basic rituals. Most Soto Zen places have services after sitting. These services involve making several prostrations, full bows to the floor, usually 3 at the beginning and 3 at the end. In between, the group will chant texts. The services are focused on an altar with a Buddha statue in its center and some flowers and candles. Incense may be offered. usually by an officiating priest, and the service is regulated with temple instruments, a large and a small bell, and a drum for keeping time during the chanting. The texts are mostly in English but sometimes in Sino-Japanese. Meals usually take place after services, and these too involve some ritual, usually brief chanting before and after the meal, which everyone begins and ends together. Generally, in Zen meditation halls, people are instructed to wear dark, subdued clothing. Some people may wear formal sitting robes, and some who have received precepts either as lay or priest practitioners will wear ceremonial robes appropriate to their ordinations. We are going to say more about all this later. If you go to a sesshin, there will be more detail to the ritual, even including oryoki, which is Zen eating bowls, meals, a formal style of eating that involves many details about the handling of bowls and spoons, which again may seem intimidating at first, but once you learn them, are quite natural and smooth. There are also rituals for special occasions, like Buddha's birthday or Enlightenment Day, precepts, ceremonies, weddings, funerals, and so on. For Zen practitioners who have been around a while, the study and skillful practice of these various rituals become an important part of their practice. It's a way of extending the calmness and focus of the sitting practice into activity. The striking of a bell or a drum, the loving care in preparing an altar for service, the offering of flowers, incense, and candles. Susan, what is the meaning of the service? Norman, the simplest answer is we inherited this service from the people who transmitted the practice to us, and out of respect for them, we continue it. The next simplest answer is that the service has a lot of meaning and benefit as a practice. We chant texts, at least some texts, that orient us to the teachings. To chant such texts again and again, till we eventually have them by heart, is inspiring and edifying. We make prostrations which, while countercultural for us, and may be beneficial for just that reason for overcoming cultural prejudice, is a good way to cultivate humility and devotion, positive qualities in short supply. And we do all this together, joining our voices and bodies, which creates a sense of community, as all ritual does. In most Buddhist services, the positive spiritual energy fostered by the bowing and chanting is dedicated to ancestors, teachers, community members who are sick or have died, or others in need. To intentionally remember others this way helps us to develop gratitude and compassion, also positive qualities in short supply. Although it is commonplace in our culture to complain about religious ritual, in fact, ritual is a good practice because it helps you to develop these qualities I've been mentioning: gratitude, devotion, humility, concern for others, once you get over your theoretical antipathy to it. All of this is a rational defense of ritual. Then there are the less rational defenses, that ritual has power we can't account for, power we can't make responsible sense of. I don't completely discount this possibility, given the enormous emphasis placed on ritual in virtually all ancient cultures. Possibly not all of our ancestors were deluded. Susan: Yes, and ritual is also healing. I know, I have experienced it that way in rough times. Just to chant can help me sometimes. And, for instance, a memorial service brings people together in their grief and gives them a way to express themselves and feel their connectedness. Weddings and precept ceremonies are moving. They create a strong community bond and are real rites of passage. They make a difference in people's lives. They certainly have in mine. Norman: Yes, you're right. Like a lot of people, I didn't particularly appreciate the ritual side of Zen when I first began, but now I see how important and moving it is. On the other hand, lots of people practice Zen without participating in a service or any other form of ritual. I do myself in some of the settings in which everyday Zen operates. Susan: Is it important to memorize the chants? Norman: If you keep attending service, eventually you'll learn most of the chants. There is no need to try to memorize them, but good if you want to do that. When you are familiar with the texts being chanted, you feel at home with the practice community, which is a very good feeling. In the beginning, the chants seem foreign and strange, which makes you feel slightly uncomfortable. Later you have a feeling of belonging that you will have earned. This is a natural process that everyone goes through. Susan: Why do we still say a lot of the chants in Japanese? In Japan, they do the chants in Japanese because that's their language, and they understand the words. Are we pretending to be Japanese? Norman: If we are pretending to be Japanese, we are failing miserably at it. One good reason to chant in Japanese is, as I said, out of respect for our Japanese teachers. Zen exists in several Asian cultures, and in each Zen is different. I'm using the Japanese word for the tradition Zen to stand for all the Zen traditions of Asia. Excuse me. Each of which has its own name in its own language. I do this not to be disrespectful of Chinese, Vietnamese, or Korean cultures, but simply for the reader's convenience. Our Zen comes from Japan, where it is profoundly embedded in the Japanese ethos and spirit, so to chant in Japanese is to honor and remember this. Japan is part of our history, and it's important to remember your history. Excuse me, I have to drink. Although in America, a sense of history tends to be rather thin. Of course, we can't be Japanese or anything like Japanese, but it grounds us and humanizes us to remember where our tradition comes from. Interestingly, there is an unexpected side benefit to chanting in Japanese. In Japan, Buddhist scriptures, which are translations and often transliterations from the Chinese, are standardized. Wherever you go in Japan, you will be reading or chanting the same words. Standardization is a benefit of hierarchical power of structures. The bishop or emperor decides which version of the Heart Sutra will be chanted. So wherever you go in Japan, you will chant the same Japanese Heart Sutra we chant here. This is a good feeling if you go to Japan. You feel connected. The text will be in your bones. In the West, Buddhism is in many languages. If I go to Germany, I don't understand the German Heart Sutra. But when we chant in Japanese, I feel a strong connection. Same thing in France, the Netherlands, anywhere. It's the same in the United States, Canada, or any other English-speaking place. Virtually every Anglophone Zen place has a different translation of the Heart Sutra. So when I go to another temple, I feel like they are chanting the wrong Heart Sutra. Why do they say it this way, not the way I am used to? But when they chant it in Japanese, I feel solidarity. Funny. Religion is so intimate. It goes deep into the soul. This is good and bad. Good because you feel so deeply for your tradition, bad because that very good feeling can make you uncomfortable in other traditions. For instance, when I go to other English-speaking Soto-Zen places and chant an unfamiliar Heart Sutra translation, I can feel a little alienated or off balance. So maybe it would be good to standardize the English Heart Sutra. It might bring all the Soto-Zen groups closer together. When I was abbot of the San Francisco Zen Center, I participated in efforts to bring this about, but they weren't successful, too bad. On the other hand, when I go to other Soto-Zen places and hear variants of the Heart Sutra translation, I usually learn something new. It makes me see the sutra slightly differently. So maybe it's good for me and all of us to challenge our traditional prejudices and practice with other forms and traditions. Susan. Why do we put so much emphasis on doing everything a certain way? What difference does it really make whether you sit zazen with your right or left hand on top? Whether you rest your spoon in your first or second bowl during a formal oryoki meal? Isn't Zen kind of obsessive-compulsive? Norman. Maybe Zen can be a bit obsessive. I like to soften that and foster a relaxed feeling about how we do the forms. Maybe even simplify. After all, the forms are to facilitate practice and transformation. There are no eternal rules. But there is a point to doing things a certain way. In fact, one always does things a certain way. There is never no way. There's always some way. And there is always a degree of flexibility and creativity in how you interpret or apply the way you do things. In music, there are scales to learn and practice, very rigid. Why not just pick up the horn and toot in the way you feel like tooting? But no, there won't be music that way, or anyway, there won't be Beethoven or Verdi. There's nothing absolute about left hand over right or where you put your spoon on your bowl. It could have been some other way. There's also nothing absolute about the chromatic scale. It just happens to be the way our music works. Zen forms make sense. They have a feeling, an integrity, a history, a depth. They facilitate spiritual development in certain directions. But yes, it's also very important not to get so stuck on them that they become counterproductive, which can happen. Susan. What would counterproductive look like? Norman. It would like a very uptight, crabby Zen practitioner constantly complaining about everyone not doing it right and closed off to his or her own joy and creativity by a slavish attachment to Zen forms. Susan. Back to the bowing for a moment. Some people might object to it as idolatrous. Have Christians or Jews or others who have practiced with you had this objection? Norman. In fact, I had this question myself when I first came to practice. As a person who had grown up a practicing Jew, I didn't particularly appreciate or understand the idea of bowing to statues. So I asked my teacher, probably not accidentally, he was also Jewish, why this was necessary and what it meant. He took me up close to the altar, which enshrined a particularly small Buddha statue. He pointed out to me that the statue's hands were in bowing position. You bow to the Buddha bows to you, he told me, or words to that effect. The idea was, I think, that when you are bowing to the Buddha, you are not bowing to an external power. There are no external powers to Buddhism. You are, in fact, bowing to yourself, your true self, which is identical to the Buddha. So, in a sense, your bowing is conditioning you to respect what is deepest and truest within you, and in everything, and everyone else. Somewhere, this explanation was sufficient for me, and from then on, I was able to bow without any problems. Apparently, my objection didn't run very deep. So we have 1 page left, just for you to know. But the question of idolatry does run deep in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It really means don't put anything in your life above God in its importance to you. This is symbolized as not bowing down to statues, but it is a much deeper prohibition than that. Money, power, success, sex, prestige, psychological dominance, all can be, and these days probably are, more important to most people than religious commitment. Bowing or not bowing to a statue, especially when you don't take the statue as representing a god, is a minor thing compared to this. So it could be that a Christian or a Jew might well practice bowing to a Buddha statue as an antidote to idolatry. On the other hand, sometimes Jews or Christians have come in practice with us and prefer not to bow during services. People in our groups understand this and don't think anything of it. One of my dear fellow practitioners is an Orthodox rabbi. When he comes to Sesshin, he leaves during Buddha's services and goes outside to say his Jewish prayer service. To me, this is a beautiful thing, that he can feel comfortably doing this. And the rest of the people in the Sesshin can enjoy seeing him praying, all wrapped up in his prayer shawl. We pass him, still in prayer, as we walk to the dining hall. Sue? Why is Zen so strict? Couldn't it soften up a little, be more fluid, like water, take the shape of the bodies and the cultures that it flows into? Norman. Yes, gentle, flexible, relaxed, not strict is better. structure, form, but not obsession. I agree. Let's soften it up a bit. No doubt Zen has always taken, will always take, and is now taking the shape of the bodies and cultures that it flows into. But this is a sensitive matter, and it takes time. It's not something you just decide and figure out according to your idea of Zen and your idea about your culture. Actually, any attempt to define or figure out Zen or American culture will always be a failure. Both are works in progress, fluid, various, complex, without an inherent essence that anyone can put a finger on. Who can decide what is American or what is Zen? So we practice carefully, respectfully, seriously over time, doing our best to figure it out. Little by little it happens. Somehow there is Zen, and it is here in our place and time. It may look more Japanese than you think it should, but believe me, it's not Japanese. Just ask a Japanese Zen person. So that was the reading part for today, and I will let you know the title of the next chapter. It is Awakening, so you probably feel like partaking, and then I read the other ones: History, Beliefs and Ethics, Teachings, Teachers, Stages of Practice, Over the Long Haul, Sangha, Everyday Life and Everyday Relationships, Zen and Art, and last not least the 14th, Saving All Sentient Beings. So which means that 14 weeks lie ahead of us. And I'm quite still in an experimental period. So today no Zooming. There was a problem with it, and when I Zoomed last week, nobody entered. Today I live stream again, and I'm enjoying that. I'm reading the name of four dear friends, so this is beautiful. But how to get into a sharing, this is now the problem also. So I would like from now half an hour or so to interconnect, to share questions or statements, and I don't see how we can do it while live stream. So maybe if you got interested in this way of working through the book and going deeper than only listening to my voice and to Norman's and Susan voices, you may write me on Facebook, and you can also write now. So my idea for now is to conclude this listening reading session, and I will end this. And if you feel inspired, just use my wall, write something, and we could interact a little bit. What do you think? I thank you very much for your attention. The other day, somebody was writing, "Attention is love," and one should not, perhaps one should not say it like this so plainly, but I really agree. It is something to think about. I bow to you, to your attention, wishing you an inspiring Saturday and Sunday.